W.E.B. Du Bois was an activist and sociologist, years ahead of his time, but ignored because he was Black. He introduced the concept of double consciousness, an internal conflict experienced by oppressed groups. This is the sensation of two-ness, of split identity, of looking at oneself through the eyes of the dominant group. Du Bois described this consciousness as a burden, as an exhaustion, but ultimately as a gift, because it gave him a critical understanding of power that whites don't have. Over 100 years after he published a book with this theory, I sat in a sociology class learning about his work. Though I'm white, I felt that my dilemma had been explained so simply by double consciousness, and felt a deep sense of relief that there was a sociological basis for my experience of being nonconforming. I remember clearly the first moment my identity felt validated. I was getting ready for work with one of my partners, and told her I was thinking of making the switch to exclusively they/them pronouns. She smiled, proud, and said, "I knew you were too smart to be cis." She told me that when she'd first met me, she'd had to train herself to use she/her pronouns, because I'd never seemed cisgender to her. I felt so seen. 1 year later, listening to a lecture on Du Bois, her initial comment came full circle. I'd spent significant energy in the weeks prior trying to figure out how to tell the story of my gender to cisgender people. A simple statement was giving me significant pause. I'm glad I'm not cisgender. How could I say that and not offend the cisgender audience? How could I teach them to think in systems, to not feel personally attacked? How can I make them understand the constant mental and emotional energy that accompanies being non-binary in a world that rejects or ignores you? How could I tell a story to an audience that defines the way I'm allowed to tell the story? I bounced between different strategies, helping cisgender people see their privilege, acting as a dictionary, trying to force double consciousness. Looking back on my initial draft, only half of it actually spoke in the first person, and that half still focused largely on explaining the basic difficulties of navigating a cisgender world. These strategies and questions have been pressing down on me since the first moment I realized I was genderqueer. That's why I feel so liberated when I see those in-group signals, the way someone walks, their clothes, their facial expressions, their slang, that tell me I'm safe, that they are like me, that I can share without thinking through my every word, without having to prove that I'm valid, without having to educate them on gender. I'm glad I'm not cisgender. This is the truth, and yet I feel guilt sharing it here, and I have to justify it with theory and tales. This is supposed to be the story of my gender, and it still revolves around the feelings of cisgender people. So it has become the story of telling the story of my gender, and a chronicle in failed communication. When this project was still in its early stages, I explained these dilemmas to my professor, frustrated that I couldn't quite make him understand. He asked me how it felt to have to caretake a cisgender audience when telling a personal story. Tears coming to my eyes, I responded with one word and a deep exhale. Exhausting.